Someone knocked on Richard's door. It was Bennet Hatch.
"Good afternoon, Richard,"
he said.
"Sir Daniel wants to see you immediately."
Good, said Richard. I want to see him too. I have a lot of things to ask him. There are too many mysteries at Moat House Castle. Too many things I don't understand. Sir Daniel is not telling me the truth.
"Richard,"
said Hatch,
"please be careful. Don't ask Sir Daniel certain questions."
What do you mean, Hatch? Asked Richard.
"Well, you know, certain questions about—"
I want answers to my questions, said Richard angrily, and he went to Sir Daniel's room. Sir Oliver was there. He was sitting in a corner of the room, and his face was white.
"Come in, Richard,"
said Sir Daniel.
"Please sit down. You look worried, my boy. Are you still thinking about that letter on the church door?"
Yes, and I want some answers, said Richard. My father was killed when I was a little boy. People say that you and Sir Oliver killed him. I want to know the truth.
Oh, Richard, do you really think I killed your father?
Said Sir Daniel, smiling.
Your father was my friend. When he died, I looked after you all these years and taught you many things. And poor Sir Oliver, he's a priest, a kind, honest man.
Sir Daniel, for many years you used my family's money because I live with you, said Richard angrily, and you'll soon plan my marriage and get a lot of money for it.
How can you say these terrible things? Cried Sir Daniel. You're making me very angry. But you're still a boy. We'll talk about this when you're a man. Remember, I did not kill your father. I promise.
When Sir Oliver heard the words, "I promise," he jumped in his chair. Richard saw this and understood a lot. After he left the room, Sir Daniel said,
The boy asks too many questions. He knows too many things. Put him in the room above the church.
The room above the church? Asked Sir Oliver quietly.
Yes, you heard me,
said Sir Daniel. Richard went to his room and remembered Hatch's words. Don't trust Sir Daniel or Sir Oliver. In the evening, one of Sir Daniel's men came to his room and said,
Follow me, Master Shelton. You'll sleep in another room tonight.
In another room? Asked Richard.
Yes, in the room above the church,
said the man.
It's nice and big, but it's full of ghosts.
Full of ghosts? Thought Richard. What does he mean? Richard sat on the big bed in the new room, and he was worried. He did not know that many men were killed in that room. I must leave this castle immediately, he thought. Something bad is happening. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. It was John Matcham. John, I'm happy to see you, said Richard.
Oh, Richard, listen to me,
said John.
I heard Sir Daniel's men talking. They want to kill you. I want to help you escape. I think there's a secret way out of this room.
They started looking for it and found a small trapdoor under a table.
This is the secret way out,
said John excitedly.
We can escape together.
Then they heard Sir Daniel's voice.
Joanna! Joanna! Where are you?
Who is Joanna? Asked Richard. John looked at Richard and said,
I am Joanna.
You? Said Richard, surprised. Then you're not a boy. You're a girl. You're Joanna Sedley.
Yes, I'm Joanna Sedley.
She took off her big hat, and Richard could see her long blonde hair. She was very pretty. You're a brave girl, said Richard, smiling. And you're beautiful, too. They could hear Sir Daniel's voice again.
Joanna! Where are you?
We must escape immediately,
said Joanna. They opened the trapdoor and went down the long secret corridor. They came to a big door, but it was locked.
What can we do now?
Asked Joanna. I don't know, said Richard. Perhaps someone will open this door because we're near the church. Let's wait here. They sat down on the stone floor. Are you Sir Daniel's ward too? Asked Richard.
Yes, my mother and father are dead, and my family was rich. At first, Lord Foxham looked after me. He was a good man. Then Sir Daniel took me. After some time, Lord Foxham took me back. He wanted me to marry Lord Hamley. When Sir Daniel heard this, he decided to kidnap me. He gave me these boys' clothes and said, "You will marry Richard Shelton." Every marriage brings Sir Daniel a lot of money.
I'm happy I met you, Joanna, said Richard.
I am too,
she said. Suddenly, they realized someone was behind them. It was Bennet Hatch. Hatch, what are you doing here? Asked Richard, surprised.
I'm looking for you, Richard,
said Hatch.
Sir Daniel wants to kill you, but not Joanna. I want to help you both escape. Here is the key to the door.
He took an old key from his pocket and opened the big door.
Now you can escape across the church to the tower. I'll tell Sir Daniel I couldn't find you. Good luck.
Chapter 5. Ellis Duckworth. Richard and Joanna ran across the church to the castle tower. Richard tied the rope around a big stone. He looked back and saw no one. We must climb down the tower to the moat and swim to the other side, he said. Then we can run to the forest and we'll be free.
Very well,
said Joanna bravely. I'll go first and you can follow me, said Richard. Can you climb down a rope, Joanna?
I'll try,
she said. Richard started climbing down the rope. One of Sir Daniel's men on the other tower saw him.
Shelton's trying to escape,
he shouted. He shot Richard in the arm with an arrow. Richard fell into the moat and tried to swim to the other side. Arrows were flying from the tower into the moat. When Joanna saw Richard falling into the moat, she screamed. One of Sir Daniel's men heard her and took her by the arm. She was Sir Daniel's prisoner again. Richard got out of the water and ran into the forest. From there he could see Moat House Castle, but he could not see Joanna. One of Sir Daniel's men probably caught her, he thought. But Sir Daniel won't hurt her, because he wants to plan her marriage. I'll come back and rescue her soon. His arm hurt, and he could not walk. He fell to the ground on the leaves. Ellis Duckworth and another man found Richard the next morning. He was very ill, so they took him to an inn and put him to bed. When Richard woke up, he said, "Oh, my arm and head hurt a lot." Ellis Duckworth took his hand and smiled.
My dear boy, I'm Ellis Duckworth, and I was your father's best friend. He was like a brother to me.
He looked at the other man and said,
He's Lawless, one of my best men. Now, Richard, please sleep. When you're better, you'll tell me your story, and we'll help you.
The next day, Richard was feeling better, and he told Ellis Duckworth his long story.
I'm happy you're here with us,
said Ellis.
We're the band of the Black Arrow, and we want to punish bad people. I know you're brave and loyal, Richard. Together we'll fight and destroy Sir Daniel, and we'll rescue Joanna too. But first we must find out where she is.
A few days later, a mysterious messenger took this letter to Moat House Castle. To Sir Daniel Brackley, you are a bad man. You are greedy and dishonest. Now I know you killed my father. One day I will kill you. Leave Joanna Sedley alone. I want to marry her soon. Richard Shelton. Sir Daniel read the letter and thought,
That boy is dangerous. I must find him.
Many months passed, and it was already winter. The House of Lancaster won a lot of battles and became strong and important. York was very weak now. The town of Shoreby-on-the-Till was full of Lancaster nobles. Sir Daniel with 60 men, his friend Lord Shoreby with 200 men, and many others. One cold winter night in January, 3 men of the band of the Black Arrow sat in a dark inn.
I don't like this place,
said one man.
There are too many enemies here.
We're here to help Master Shelton,
said Lawless. Suddenly, a young man came into the inn.
Master Shelton,
said Lawless.
Sir Daniel left the inn a few minutes ago with 6 men. Let's follow him,
said Richard. It was dark outside, but they could see Sir Daniel and his men walking towards the sea. Near the sea, they saw an old lord with some men. He was short and fat. He met Sir Daniel in front of a stone house with a wall around it. Richard and his men hid behind some trees and watched the 2 men, but they could not hear them speak.
It's old Lord Shoreby,
thought Richard angrily.
He's another greedy man.
Tell me, Sir Daniel, how is the young girl? Asked the old lord. Is she very beautiful?
Lord Shoreby,
said Sir Daniel.
Joanna Sedley's young, beautiful, and very rich. She'll be an excellent wife. The Sedley family was very rich and very important. She'll bring you a lot of money.
And I'll pay you a lot of money, Sir Daniel, but I want to see her now, said Lord Shoreby. Sir Daniel and Lord Shoreby went into the stone house, followed by their men. When they came out, Lord Shoreby was smiling, and went home. Sir Daniel and his men went back to the inn.
Now we know Joanna is Sir Daniel's prisoner,
said Richard,
and Lord Shoreby wants to marry her. That greedy old man. We must stop this marriage. I want to look inside the house. Lawless, come with me, please. The others can wait here.
Richard climbed to the top of the stone wall. From there he could see the kitchen window and Joanna. She was sitting at a table with Bennet Hatch's wife and 3 of Sir Daniel's men stood behind her.
She's very beautiful,
thought Richard. He was happy to see her, but he was angry with Sir Daniel and Lord Shoreby. He climbed down the wall and said to his men,
I saw Joanna. She's inside. We must rescue her. Let's think of a good plan.
Chapter 6. The Two Friars. Richard and the men of the Black Arrow decided to attack Sir Daniel's house near the sea and rescue Joanna. That night, Richard and his 20 men climbed over the wall of the house. But Sir Daniel's men attacked them before they could get into the house. Sir Daniel had 60 men, and Richard had only 20. His men fought bravely, but they could not get into the house and rescue Joanna. Many men were hurt, and some were killed. They went back to the forest. When Sir Daniel heard about the attack, he said,
Shelton wants to rescue Joanna and marry her. We must take her to my castle in Shoreby. She'll be safe there, and she'll marry Lord Shoreby in a few days.
The next morning, Richard and Lawless sat by the fire.
If we don't rescue Joanna, she'll have to marry that old lord,
said Richard sadly.
What can we do?
Lawless looked at him and said,
Perhaps I can help you. Follow me. Where are we going?
asked Richard.
To a secret place,
said Lawless. They walked in the snow to a small den under a big tree. Inside the den, there was a table and a wooden box.
This is my secret den,
said Lawless.
Your secret den?
said Richard, surprised.
It's very small.
Lawless opened the wooden box and took out a friar's robe. It was old and brown. Then he took out another one.
What are these?
asked Richard.
They're 2 friars' robes. Let's put them on, and everyone will think we're friars. But why?
asked Richard, confused.
With these robes, no one will recognize us,
said Lawless.
We can easily get into Sir Daniel's castle in Shoreby. Remember, no one stops a friar. Sir Daniel's castle in Shoreby? But why?
asked Richard.
Master Shelton,
cried Lawless.
Joanna is now in his castle, and she'll soon marry old Lord Shoreby. Now do you understand?
Richard was very surprised.
How do you know this?
he asked.
Young man, I'm Lawless, and I'm much older than you. I know a lot of things you don't know. But how can we stop this marriage?
asked Richard.
We'll think of a plan,
said Lawless.
Now, put on the friar's robe.
Richard put on the robe and asked,
How do I look? Not bad, but I must do something to your face now,
answered Lawless. He took some dark pencils from the box and drew a moustache and a small beard on Richard's young face.
Perfect,
he said.
Now you look like a friar. Remember to keep your hood on, and no one will recognize you.
Lawless put on the other robe, and they left the den. When they got to Shoreby, they went to the castle. There were a lot of people at the castle. Rich gentlemen with their ladies, soldiers, merchants, musicians, and acrobats. The 2 friars went to a soldier and said,
We're here to visit Joanna Sedley.
Her room is on the 2nd floor,
said the soldier. The two friars went to the second floor and found Joanna's room.
"I'll wait outside,"
said Lawless. Richard entered Joanna's room and took off his hood.
"Joanna,"
he said softly.
"it's me, Richard."
She ran to him, and they hugged.
"Oh, Richard,"
Joanna said.
"I'm happy to see you. What are you doing here?"
"I'm here with a friend to rescue you,"
said Richard.
"But how?"
Joanna asked.
"I'm Sir Daniel's prisoner, and I have to marry Lord Shoreby tomorrow morning. I'm so unhappy because I don't want to marry him."
"You won't marry that horrible old man,"
said Richard.
"I promise, Joanna. I want to marry you."
He put on his hood and left the room quietly. He and Lawless went to the church to think of a plan. But Richard met Sir Oliver in the church. "Richard Shelton," he said, surprised. "Sir Daniel is looking for you. You're in great danger."
"I'm here to stop Joanna's marriage,"
said Richard.
"I'm not afraid of Sir Daniel."
"You can't stop this marriage," said the priest, "because Sir Daniel will kill you. You must stay in this church until tomorrow morning, and then leave. If you try to escape, I'll call the soldiers." Richard and Lawless could not move. At 9 o'clock the next morning, there were a lot of people in the church. Richard and Lawless were there too. Joanna was wearing a beautiful white dress and had flowers in her hair, but she was pale and sad. Old Lord Shoreby was wearing his best clothes. Joanna and Lord Shoreby stood in front of the priest. Ellis Duckworth and his men were hiding on the stairs of the church tower. Suddenly, a black arrow flew across the church and killed Lord Shoreby. Joanna and the people in the church screamed. Sir Daniel and his men took Joanna away immediately. Richard and Lawless were angry, but they could do nothing. They watched Joanna leave with Sir Daniel. Chapter 7. The Victory of York. Richard and Lawless returned to the forest. That night, Ellis Duckworth's men sat around the fire.
"There's going to be an important battle tomorrow between the houses of Lancaster and York,"
said Duckworth to his men.
"We're going to attack Shoreby Castle. This time, York will win."
"Hooray!" cried the men.
"And we're going to find my enemy, Sir Daniel. Remember, there's a black arrow waiting for him and his good friends, Bennet Hatch and Sir Oliver Oates."
We'll find them!" cried the men.
"Richard,"
said Duckworth,
"go and meet the Duke of Gloucester at St. Brigid's Cross tomorrow morning. Take him this important message. Dear Richard, Duke of Gloucester, my 20 men will meet your soldiers outside Shoreby Castle before the battle. We will fight together and win. Ellis Duckworth."
Very early the next morning, Richard rode to St. Brigid's Cross. It was a cold morning, and there was a lot of snow on the road. When he got there, he saw a young knight dressed in armour on a big black horse. The white rose of the House of York was on his shield. He was alone, and he was fighting 8 soldiers. He was a good fighter, and killed 3 soldiers.
"I can help you, sir,"
cried Richard. He and the knight fought together, and the fight was soon over. The young knight was surprised. He turned to Richard and said,
"Thank you for your help. You're a good fighter, and you saved my life. Who are you?
I'm Richard Shelton, and I'm looking for the Duke of Gloucester.
Well, you found him,
said the knight.
I'm Richard, Duke of Gloucester.
Here's a message from Ellis Duckworth,
said Richard, giving him the letter. The Duke read the letter and said,
Good. I need more brave men for this battle. Duckworth is a loyal friend, and together we'll win.
Soon the Duke's soldiers arrived. They were carrying flags with the white rose of York.
We're ready,
he cried.
Let's attack Shoreby Castle!
Many of the soldiers at Shoreby Castle were still sleeping when the Duke attacked. Hundreds of soldiers fought in a long battle, and many were killed. At the end of the battle, there was a fire, and Shoreby Castle was almost destroyed. The House of York won the battle, and Sir Daniel escaped with Joanna, Bennet Hatch, and 2 men. The Duke of Gloucester was pleased with the victory. He went to Richard and said,
You're a brave young man, and you fought well. Kneel down, Richard. I want to knight you.
Richard knelt down in front of the Duke and became Sir Richard. This was a great honour for him. The next day, Sir Richard left Shoreby and started looking for Joanna. He knew she was with Sir Daniel. He travelled all day, and in the evening he saw a small fire on a hill.
Perhaps that's Sir Daniel's fire,
he thought. He moved silently through the trees and got closer. He saw Sir Daniel, Bennet Hatch, and a young boy sitting near the fire. They were eating and talking.
Joanna is dressed as John Matcham again,
thought Richard.
Sir Daniel is very clever.
Richard hid behind a big tree and watched them. It was obvious that Joanna was very sad. He waited until they were finally asleep, and then he quietly went up to Joanna.
Joanna,
he whispered in her ear.
Wake up.
She woke up and smiled.
We must be very quiet,
whispered Sir Richard.
Get up slowly and follow me.
They moved away very quietly through the trees. They got on Sir Richard's horse and went into the forest. That night they slept at Ellis Duckworth's camp near Holywood. When Joanna woke up, she said,
This is like a dream, Richard. We're together again.
Yes, and tomorrow we can get married,
Sir Richard said excitedly.
I'm going to talk to the kind friar of Holywood Abbey this morning.
I'm very happy, Richard,
said Joanna. Sir Richard woke up very early on the day of his marriage. He was the happiest man in the world. He put on his best clothes and took a short walk in the forest. Soon he saw a friar walking towards him. As the friar came closer, he recognized him. It was Sir Daniel. He put his hand on his sword because he was ready to fight.
I'm not here to fight you,
said Sir Daniel sadly.
My men and I fought bravely, but we lost the battle against the House of York. It was a long, terrible battle, and now I have nothing. I lost my castle, my men, my money, my jewels. I lost everything. Now I must escape to France, where I still have some friends. I hope they can help me.
Go to France, Sir Daniel, and don't come back,
said Sir Richard angrily. Sir Daniel turned around and continued walking in the forest. But, after a minute, a black arrow flew through the morning air and hit him in the heart. He fell to the ground, and Sir Richard ran to his side.
Richard,
He said quietly.
is the arrow black?
Yes, it's black,
said Richard. Sir Daniel looked at him for the last time and died.
I killed him,
said a voice in the forest. It was Ellis Duckworth.
and yesterday I killed Bennet Hatch.
He walked out of the forest and stood by Richard.
You killed all of your enemies except one,
said Richard.
Yes, Sir Oliver is still alive,
said Duckworth.
Don't kill him, Ellis,
said Richard.
Let's live in peace.
Duckworth thought for a moment. He looked at the body of Sir Daniel and said,
You're right, Richard. I want to live in peace. I don't want to fight or kill any more. The band of the Black Arrow doesn't exist anymore.
At 9 o'clock that morning, Richard and Joanna finally got married at Holywood Abbey. It was a beautiful wedding, and everyone was happy. Richard, Joanna, Ellis Duckworth, the men of the Black Arrow, and the Duke of Gloucester and his soldiers celebrated with a dinner. Richard and Joanna lived a happy, peaceful life in the forest, far from wars and battles.